Danielle Berman is a remarkable advocate for mental health. She was raised in Dundas and now lives in Vancouver, where she works in social work as a mental health and addictions counselor. She's been able to turn the tragedy of losing her father and her own subsequent battles with depression into a national campaign to help rid the stigma of mental health. In 2014, she founded Ride Away Stigma as she cycled from Vancouver, BC to Hamilton, raising both awareness around mental illness and raising over $50,000 in her campaign. And she continues to attract attention to this very important cause. You're in for a special evening with Danielle. Danielle, come on up, please.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here this evening. I just wanted to start by thanking all of you for being here tonight. As a person who felt so alone and so isolated, and for all those people currently who are feeling that way, you've shown myself and everyone out there that they're not alone, and there are so many people that care and want to make a difference. So thank you for being here. My eyes were open up to mental health at a very young age. It was the summer going into grade 8 when I came home and saw a police car out front, and my mom hugged me and shared that my dad had died by suicide. I remember going into denial. It wasn't denial in that I knew he was never coming back and I was never going to see him again, but I didn't want to believe that he had chosen to die. I just wanted to be a regular teenager and not have to deal with coming to terms with that and understanding what that really meant. I can even remember at my dad's funeral, I asked my mom if I could have a sleepover. I just didn't really understand what was going on and just wanted to be a teenager. And it wasn't even for about 2 years before I started talking about my dad passing away. And so I did go on to just being my happy, bubbly self, and went into high school and was all excited, making lots of friends, and everything was going really great for me at that time. There was no reason for anything to go wrong, but come grade 11, a dark cloud kind of entered into my life. Part of that cloud was coming to terms with that my dad did die by suicide, and starting to question people about if they knew if he was struggling, if they had reached out to him, or if he had reached out to them. And what I remember most about that time is a lot of anger, and it was a lot of misplaced anger. I was angry that people who did know didn't save him. I was angry with myself that I didn't know and that I didn't save him. And eventually I was able to realize that this was misplaced anger, and as a 13-year-old, there's no way I could have been his savior. That's not my responsibility at that age. But it was quite hard to go through that and come to terms with that. But on the other side of this dark cloud, there's dark sadness, and I didn't understand what was going on. I had friends, I had a loving, supporting family, and I didn't understand why I was struggling so much and was being so tormented by my thoughts. I each morning would wake up and put on a mask and try and be that happy, bubbly self so that no one would know. And it was completely exhausting doing that. I would leave by myself at lunch or skip classes so that I could just hide and be able to cry and not have to be that fake person. And I just felt so alone and didn't understand what these emotions were and why I was so tormented by them. And I was terrified if anyone were to find out that I would lose my friends and that they would judge me. They would think I chose this. I'm just seeking out attention. So I hid behind closed doors for a long time. And I started to act out because I didn't know what else to do. I was just trying to manage. And it wasn't acting out in a way of getting people's attention. I was trying to just do reckless behavior and all kinds of things, just thinking it would help me cope. I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol in the hopes that it would numb my emotions. And when marijuana didn't work and was making my emotions worse, I tried other drugs and just kept experimenting, thinking that maybe these could numb my feelings and I wouldn't have to go through this anymore. But coming off those drugs just made it so much harder. And it went from having just thoughts of hoping that my reckless behavior of driving really fast would cause an accident to actually wanting to die and having a plan of how I wanted to die. And it still scares me today that I did have that plan and was so very close to following through on that plan. But fortunately, around that time, my mom noticed that I was withdrawing from my family, and she said to me that I needed to seek help, and either I had to go to a counselor with her or on my own, but something had to be done. I can still remember that first session and being completely terrified. Terrified that what if this doesn't help? What if no one out there can help me? My only other option is to take my own life. That's how I felt, and so I was terrified. But that first session with that counselor, I remember a huge weight being lifted off my chest. I knew I was no longer alone. Before that session ended, the therapist called my mom to tell her that she believed I was severely clinically depressed and was maybe going to need other forms of treatment as well. And treatment is different for everyone, but for me, I did go on an antidepressant, and it was challenging at first to find one that worked and was going through challenging side effects. And I remember before trying an antidepressant being terrified as well, like what if it changes me? What if I have to have this forever? And just not having that much hope and not knowing what to do, but did take that step and was able to find a medication that worked for me. And I did continue going to see a counselor on a weekly basis. And I remember as well sometimes leaving high school at lunch to go see the therapist and being so nervous that my friends were gonna question where I was going and maybe judge me. But eventually, I started to become more confident in myself. As my mood lifted from seeking treatment, I'd be able to realize that I didn't choose this, and no one who struggles chose to be like this. No one would ever want to be tormented by those thoughts I was going through. And I realized that maybe there's others out there that are struggling. So I started opening up to my friends, and it was remarkable, the support I got. And no one judged me. No one decided they didn't want to be my friend. And I was able to just gain confidence in myself and my recovery, and was able to lead a path of recovery. And I remember after undergrad, I decided that I wanted to be able to give back to the community and help those struggling find a voice like I was able to find. And so I decided that I wanted to do my master's in social work. And so I went to Yeshiva University in New York City to do my master's. And at that time I was very confident. I didn't hide what I had gone through. But then my first practicum in a hospital setting in a mood disorder clinic, I remember all of a sudden being terrified that I was going to be found out. I remember thinking that if people knew what I went through, they're going to think I'm damaged and that I can't help them. And all these negative thoughts were coming to mind. And then it made me start thinking about my dad and wondering if this was some of what he was going through. My dad was a very well-respected physician in Hamilton. And when you think of a doctor, you think of them helping us. You don't want to think of your doctor having troubles. But they're humans too, and no one's invincible to this. And it just made me realize that no, I can't save my dad, but I can help carry on his legacy and his legacy of loving to help others. And so I realized that I needed to start my career by showing people that this can happen to anyone. And I can be a therapist and still have my past, because it makes me more empathetic, compassionate, and understanding. I don't share what I went through with my clients, but it is who I am, and I know I can help others because of it. But even though I decided that's how I wanted to start my career, there was lots of doubts. What if a client then Googles my name and sees what I went through? What if an employer sees maybe they're not going to hire me? And I remember one conversation with a friend very vividly, and he said, if I needed help and I saw that my therapist did a huge campaign to try and rid the stigma of mental health, I would just understand how much they cared and really wanted to make a difference. I wouldn't be judging them for it. So it gave me the courage to decide to create this campaign called Ride Away Stigma and bike from Vancouver to Hamilton. And I'm not an at the time, I was not an avid cyclist by any means. I had done one long ride, and it was from Toronto to Dundas, and I was very sore after and never did another long ride again. But I decided I needed to do something that was so big, that was going to take so much time preparing for, and that was going to take months of showing how dedicated I am, and as well to show that having physical fitness and physical activities can also help with our mental health, and to be able to reach out to people in small communities and to just have those conversations that we wouldn't usually get to have, because people ask, why are you biking? What are you doing? So I decided that this is what I needed to do. And when preparing for that campaign, a huge component for me that was the most important was to be able to create talks and be able to share my story to help those struggling in silence and knowing that they're not alone. And it was the most amazing experience to be able to go back into high schools and share my story. And I still remember my first talk, sitting in the car, texting my brother and being like, I can't do this. I'm terrified. Because if you knew me back then, I was very shy. I was nervous to hand in a resume at a clothing store when I was younger, or to make a call on the phone. And I was like, how am I actually going to do this talk? But with the support of him and my family, I knew that this is something I needed to do. I needed to get my voice heard and use my voice. And because I know if I was in high school and when I was in high school, if someone had come and shared that with me, it would have made a world of difference, and I wouldn't have struggled for as long in silence and could have gotten help sooner. So it was really remarkable being able to create these conversations before the ride, and during my ride, it also showed me how many people out there are wanting to connect and wanting to be a part of something bigger, or wanting to know that they're not alone and that others have gone through this. I had so many people reaching out to me. I had people sharing their story with me of someone that they had lost or their struggles. And when someone had shared their story with me, someone they had lost, I would think about that person on that day when I was out biking, especially on those big mountain passes in the out west, and I would tell them how I thought of that person and how that person helped get me up that hill. And they really did. I wasn't just saying it. Because it was creating this community of support that we all need so much. And so many people reached out, and I wanted I wanted mental health to be talked about as well, because it's too common that you hear with men, suck it up, be a man, don't show your emotions. And then again, maybe that's part of why my dad didn't seek the help he could have got. So I really wanted to reach out and show people, no matter your profession, your gender, it's okay to get help. And what was really amazing is how many first responders got on board with my ride, and to show even these tough men that are big macho guys that they are supporting this cause, and so many of them shared with me their own struggles. It was just quite remarkable, and an NFL player as well reached out to me and joined in supporting my ride. And what was most remarkable about that was being able to post a picture of Brandon Marshall, one of the best wide receivers, not because he's this NFL player and he now knows who I am, but he's this guy that's a strong guy, a macho guy, what people strive for, and yet he's out there sharing that he struggled with borderline personality disorder, and he's still a man, he's still showing his strength. And it's just remarkable how much of a community is out there, and it's important that we keep doing these talks so that people know. And on that last day of my ride, it was the most amazing experience for me. And I planned the route to go past my dad's grave, and I remember last minute thinking, do I stop, what do I do? And I was riding beside my bike coach, and I just said, Mandy, turn right, and we cut people off, and we went into my dad's grave, and it was such a special experience to just feel connected to him and feel that I've been able to carry on his legacy and not tormented by what happened. And I look back and I noticed hundreds of cyclists just stopped and having a moment of silence for him and all those that have been lost to suicide. It was an incredible experience. I was just on a high that was just something that was quite remarkable. And then as we were biking closer to the closing ceremony, I saw people were not where I had planned for them to be, and they were in the Garden Gallery's parking lot. And I was really stressed, thinking, oh no, we've taken up their parking lot, this is affecting their business. And I was just really concerned about that. And then all of a sudden, when I biked in there to try and get people to move, I had someone come up to me from the Garden Gallery and give me a bouquet of flowers and told me that they had lost one of their employees that past week. And it just was so moving that I had planned this months ago to have one of our stopping points there, and how beautiful it was to show them that there's hundreds of people here out supporting a ride for suicide, and to know that they're not alone in their struggles. It was quite a remarkable experience doing that ride and showing our community that there's so many people that care. But I'll tell you, it was incredibly hard to finish that ride. The day after, I remember my shaking and crying when trying to do a blog post, and just coming down off all that excitement and thinking, I've done my best. This is the hardest I've ever worked on something. What do I do now? Thinking that it was just over. And I just knew I had to get back on my bike and just not think about anything and just have time to ride. And then I realized that I needed to continue showing people my authentic self and tell them that even though I have recovered and I'm doing well, I can still have hard days like that day where I'm still crying and feeling really low, but that's okay. And I'm not going to sink back down into that hole again. And another challenge that happened for me after the ride was thinking about now starting my career as a therapist. Do I put this ride on my resume? Are my employers going to respect what I did? Or again, I kind of questioned are they going to worry that maybe this is what I'm going to share with my clients all the time and that I'm not going to be doing my job? But after 2 months of job searching, I had a job in Vancouver, and it was because of my ride that they gave me that job, because they appreciated my advocacy and how much I was willing to stand up for that community. And when I think of my shy little self, it makes me realize that it doesn't matter how big or how small we can all make a difference. And when we have a voice that we can use, we need to use it and share. At times I question, should I continue sharing my story? But it's important too, because I don't know who else is needing to hear that they're not alone. And no, I'm not saying everyone needs to get up on a stage and share their story, but we can all do something. We can all reach out. We can all be careful with our language we use around mental health. We can all make an impact. And I think I'd also like to say again how you all have made that impact tonight on me and so many people in this room, because you're all here showing that we care and that we are going to make a difference, and that suicide and mental health are not always going to be stigmatized. So thank you so much for being here and letting me share my story.